Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation. Tonight we have a special guest, Mr. Sam Ryan, CEO of Silo. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Daniel. Great to be here.
Thank you. No, it is a pleasure to have sort of a leader like yourself in our show today. And for all the guests listening to our show, what can they expect from you, Sam? I know that we're gonna hear a lot about the future of transportation, obviously. But from working with Silo, a lot of artificial intelligence, and I would love to hear about Reno and sort of how you guys been expanding from the UK to the US and other strategic markets. But overall, on a nutshell, tell us a little bit about yourself and Silo.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess quickly a bit of background. So I always describe that I fell into transportation. I think a lot of people do, and then they get fascinated by it, and they get fascinated by solving all the challenges that we see within it. So I started my career with my co-founder Barney in the ride-sharing space back in 2011. This was kind of before ride-sharing was really a thing. Like Uber was kind of really starting to expand, outside of the Bay Area and starting to ramp up. But outside of the US, ride sharing was kind of in its kind of embryonic stages. And we built a ride sharing platform for community. So students sharing rides with students, doctors sharing rides with doctors. We built that business in the UK to 5 cities and sold that business in 2014. And that was like super important background and grounding for us, because it saw how the taxi industry kind of went on this evolution from a technology perspective, how it initially rejected technology and then gradually embraced it more and more, and we saw all this kind of great innovation and technology going into the optimization of ride sharing, which then led us on to founding Zelo, which is the business that we started 6 years ago, and really out of frustration that we didn't feel like there had been enough innovation in bus and coach transportation and use of larger vehicles, right? We thought there was a huge amount of innovation going into things like autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, and so on. But actually, like as you and I know, like there's a ton that can be done by putting more people on the same vehicle, right? It's incredibly efficient. It's good for the environment. It saves people money. So we really wanted to focus on the kind of bus and shuttle sector to see how we could apply the learnings that we had before into this sector.
Perfect. Hey, Ryan. Sorry, Sam. One of the things that I admire the most about you, Sam, is that I typically tell all my customers and all the folks in the industry that once you get into the transportation sector, you typically tend to lose all your hair. But I see that you have some really good hair.
It's going back, Daniel. But yeah, holding on so far.
Good. And by the way, how old are you, Sam?
I'm almost 30, so I'm 29.
You're 29 years old.
Yeah, I don't feel it.
Wow. So again, just to recap, because I want to make sure that for all the listeners, so Sam is 29 years old. You were part of one of the main rideshare apps, the development of Addison Lee platform, if I'm correct.
That's right.
So when you said transportation landed in your hands, walk us through that process. How did it? What school did you went to, and how did you end up sort of arriving into the transportation sector?
Yeah, so I going to college, I thought I wanted to go into banking, and I was doing a finance degree. I was quite bored, actually. I sort of realized that that was the path that maybe I thought I wanted to go down, but really wasn't passionate about. And my co-founder Barney and I, so this is our second business we've been building together with our third co-founder Danny. And the story goes, we actually took two separate taxis to the same bar in the college town that we were living in the UK. We were like, hey, that was mad. Like, we absolutely could have shared that ride, right? And off the back of that, we
Sorry, so
built.
how long ago was this, and did Uber existed back then or not yet?
Uber existed, but only in the US, and at that time, it was very much like the private car service, right? It wasn't. It was very much a kind of a premium product. It wasn't the kind of Uber X product that we, is kind of ubiquitous for all of us today, right? So it was pretty kind of early stages, and but like we really didn't know what we were getting ourselves in for, right? So we started building a ride hailing app in Leeds, which is the college town that we were in the UK. And then we started to figure out, okay, well, actually, what taxi and fleet providers are we going to work with, right? And we just didn't have any understanding of that side of the market. And
so if I may interrupt you, so when you guys came up with the idea, what was the idea when you guys got on the taxi and you realized that you guys could share the same vehicle, but then did you guys went for drinks and just started talking about the idea, and then after getting more drinks, that's when you became with a good idea?
Yeah, I think that's basically how it goes. Yeah, I think there was a few months in between, kind of really making it happen, but that was, I guess, the aha moment for us, and I guess through all those kind of learnings through building that first business, we just got more and more fascinated with like transportation problems and trying to solve problems in transportation, and that led on to Zelo, which is obviously much more focused on using larger vehicles.
Got it. So before we dive into Zelo, you guys end up selling the platform. You created the platform and you sold it to Addison Lee.
That's right, yeah. And then we spent 2 years at Addison Lee, which is a 40-year-old fleet operator. It was in the process of seeing a lot of disruption from Uber starting to come into the London market by the time we arrived there in 2014. And I spent 2 years as the head of product there, so rebuilt all of their digital capability, so their mobile apps and all of the platforms they provided to their clients and to their riders and so on. I guess that was also a kind of great experience in seeing like a transport operation at scale, right? So, Addison Lee had thousands of cars on the road at any one time in London. It served all of the large corporates within London, customers with super high expectations. I started to really understand, some of the nuts and bolts of what goes into running a solid transportation operation as well.
Got it. So at what point did you say, all right, sort of my cycle has come to an end at Addison Lee, and let me go pursue my own dream? How did it happen?
Yeah, Bonnie and I aren't very good at having a boss, right? So we knew it was kind of time to go out and do our own thing. And as I said, like there was this kind of frustration that not a lot was happening with using buses and coaches and larger vehicles, because we see all these problems about like car dependency and sustainability and congestion and all of these things, right? And actually, I think the answer for so many of those problems exists by trying to use buses and coaches to encourage people to share rides, and that's really where the business started. The business model has evolved over time, like because ultimately, we've been through a pandemic. We're now in a challenging economic environment. So of course, the business model has evolved over time, but the vision has very much remained the same, which is how do we provide sustainable and affordable transportation to people that are commuting to work every day, or kids that are riding to school every day, right?
Got it. So again, I gotta ask you, how did you come up with the idea? So you were with Bonnie. Were you guys drinking in the bar again?
Probably.
Okay, I gotta make sure that we go out for drinks more often.
Yeah, the creative juices flow, I guess, at that point. No, I think we've been boiling up for some time, and it took a long time, post us leaving Addison Lee to really find what the business model and the product needed to be, right? And fast forward to today, you know, we've got a really strong business in the UK and a platform now expanding kind of really into the US market. And we've really found that right business model in terms of how we can sit between, the riders the passengers that jump on our service every day, the places they travel to every day, their employer or their school, and then, fleet operators like yourselves to actually, provide that technology and service platform that makes that as efficient as possible and a great experience for everybody involved.
Got it. So Sam, for all the listeners, which is composed of transit authority managers, procurement officers, transportation managers, Fortune 1000 companies that are involved into the transportation sector, including sort of the electrical vehicles. Uh, Help us understand who's your ideal customer and what is the solution that you offer to that customer?
Yeah, absolutely. So our ideal customer is an organization, let's say an employer. That could be a corporate office employer. It could be an employer of shift workers, manufacturing locations, distribution centers, or it could be schools, right? Anywhere where a significant amount of people travel every day. And what we find that all of those people have in common is there's a lack of public transit infrastructure that allows people to travel to those locations via public transit, and therefore they have to rely on a car, right? And that results in a few different challenges for those employers and also for the people that travel to those employers every day, which is it often results in unfilled jobs. Number one, which is one of the big things we're seeing right now, particularly for out of town, out of urban areas employers, and we help to, fill those jobs by connecting people via transportation, and that's where some of that route design and AI comes in that maybe we can talk about in a second, and also really on the kind of sustainability side is, how do we reduce the amount of people traveling individually in their cars. And how do we move them into buses, which are hopefully increasingly electric buses, as we scale.
Totally. Thank you, Sam. So for your ideal customer, so if it's a Fortune 1000 company, is it you mainly working with the procurement office team, or is it mainly with HR? What is the ideal customer for you that really identify all of the commuters that are having obstacles with the public transportation that you guys are providing this solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. HR buyers, really helping them fill unfilled jobs and reduce churn amongst their employee base, and we can use transportation to do that. Operations and procurement as well is obviously a group that we talk to often, and that becomes super relevant because Zelo's business model is asset light and nationwide, right? So we're working with hundreds of fleet operators all over the UK, all over the US, so that we can serve those customers wherever they are, right? So if you're a Fortune 500 company and you've got 20 locations across the US, we can give you a solution that is consistent and delivers the same quality through one supplier, regardless of where you are, right? Which is really, where we're able to bridge that gap between the kind of local fleet operators that own and are brilliant at operating the assets, deploying the drivers, with these companies and clients that want to be served regardless of where they are.
Got it. So with that being said, so you guys started first in the UK and then rapidly have been expanded to the US as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we started in the UK 6 years ago. We now serve over 150 customers in the UK, big names to the biggest supermarket chains in the UK to the biggest e-commerce and distribution businesses, and that business continues to grow very quickly. But what we're super excited about is the US. So so much so I'm relocating here in the next couple of months because we're seeing great traction here. We're seeing great It's not, of course, not without its challenges, but we're seeing great appetite for what we're doing, and we think over the next couple of years that the US will become a bigger market for us than the UK is today.
Awesome. So let's go a little bit deeper into the details of the capabilities that Silo is offering to your ideal customers, which is Fortune 1000 companies, and you also mentioned schools. So tell us about Reno and sort of the AI technology that Silo offers.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's use that HR buyer as an example. Let's say you're a HR buyer from a large supermarket chain. You've got a distribution center that sits outside of an urban area, right? You're employing, let's say, 500, 600, 700 people. The chances are that you've got a bunch of unfilled jobs and you've got a employee churn issue, sometimes up to kind of 300%. You come to Zelo and say, hey, that's my business problem, and I want you to help me fill those unfilled jobs. I want you to reduce that churn, and I want you to do it as sustainably as possible because we have net zero sustainability corporate ambitions. So we ask that you give to us anonymized zip code data of where your employees are currently traveling from every day. You tell us your shift information, and we take that information, we upload that into our route optimization software, and we combine that data with public transit data first. And that public transit data shows us, okay, well, out of your existing employee base, how many of them are likely to be using cars versus using public transit, because we can tell who's already well served and who isn't. And that's important for us because our mission is never to replace public transit, it's to complement it, right? And then the third data source that we add is census data. So if you're trying to fill unfilled jobs, it's super helpful for you to know where there are areas of high unemployment and high car dependency, right? And what that tells our customers is, okay, well, if you run transportation routes from these areas, that will help you to fill those unfilled jobs, right? So we combine those data sources and the data that we've been collecting over running thousands and thousands of routes over the last few years to design programs that capture as many riders as possible for those employers, and they do that at the least cost as possible, right?
Got it.
And that system is getting smarter and smarter because essentially what happens is the more and more programs we run, the more and more we figure out whether we're right or wrong in the assumptions that we made, right? And what that's doing is, once a program goes live, we figure out that the technology shows us, because everyone's booking a trip on their app, every driver is every ride is being tracked. We're collecting all this data. It's showing us, okay, well, actually, how can we use that data to optimize those programs over time, really with the aim of increasing the ridership and reducing the cost per passenger or the cost per rider to the company.
Got it. And are you guys with sort of identifying all these different patterns? Are you guys combining sort of passengers with other Fortune 1000 companies that are within the same areas and routes as well to sort of optimize those routes?
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of a mix of like providing individual programs for large employers that, obviously want to run their own transportation program because they've got enough employees and they really want it. They want the programs tailored as much as possible around their employees, but also, where you have smaller employers and efficiencies can be made, we can run transportation programs that combine different groups of employees together. And that's important, right? Because we manage all the payment platforms too, right? So, you may be one employer wants to operate a program for free, but another employer next door wants to subsidize the ticket price to $2 a ride, right? We need to be able to manage the authentication of the riders so that some travel for free and some travel for $2 a day, right? So we've built all of the software to not only design these programs, but then also to operate them efficiently.
Got it. What if let's just say I live in the outside of the city and I want to use Silo to get into the downtown areas and the financial district of the metropolitan cities. Are you guys targeting those individual riders, or is it mainly Fortune 1000 companies that you're tailoring to?
Yeah, no, our customer is is the employer, the Fortune 1000 companies. So they're our direct customer, and we then put the technology in the hands of their employees. But the customer is really the Fortune 100 company. So it's up to them to engage with us. We don't promote these programs directly to riders or consumers. We tried that in the past. It's not as successful. The reason being is, this allows us to run shuttle programs that are really community focused, in the sense that everybody's going to the same place at the same time. So when you're trying to, pull together 500 employees and put them onto, 6 or 7 buses at the same time, that's a lot easier if they're arriving at similar times and going to similar places, right?
Got it. And what's the actual benefit for the end user? So obviously, there's more technology, more capabilities, probably easy use. If I'm a daily commuter, what is the benefit to the daily commuter, pretty much?
Yeah, daily community, you're right. It's so, we make it a lot easier to pay and manage your trips, right? So we set that riders can purchase subscriptions. They can then use our mobile app to opt into different trips. If you and I, for example, are sat in a meeting and I'm on the 5 p.m. shuttle home, but I know my meeting's overrunning, I can use my app to opt into the 6 p.m. trip instead. Um, I can then also use the app to track the bus on a daily basis. So I know exactly when it's arriving. I know how to find my pickup location. So we make all of that very easy, in the kind of travel like experience that we all expect nowadays, right? We want to be able to book in a few taps. We want to be able to see exactly the status update of the ride. And we have very low tolerance for anything being late or not understanding what's going on, right? So from a rider perspective, we give them all of that transparency, and also the ability to communicate with a 24/7 support team, if they need support.
Got it. Very well said, Sam. So, what are the most common challenges that you're encountering, sort of as you guys penetrate into these markets and industries as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of things. I think one is the kind of education of the market, in the sense that if people have been running transportation programs for a long time, they're probably used to procuring it directly with fleet operators. And what we try to do is explain to them that actually there's a huge benefit in adding the technology and the service layer that Zelo provides to run the whole program more efficiently, right? And our model, just to be clear, because I know that I'm sure lots of your listeners are fleet operators, our aim is never to take the business away from the fleet operator, right? It's actually to make their lives easier, because we do a lot of the heavy lifting with the client, and also make these programs stickier with the customer, because we create a better experience, and we make sure that the client is getting the value for money, right? And I think that the second sort of challenge for us, and again you relate to this, is the fleet industry and the bus, coach, limo industry in particular, is there's so many processes that are still done with pen and paper, right? Or if they're not done with pen and paper, they're done in lots of different systems, right? And the bit of our technology that we haven't spoken about is we're really trying to support operators in the day-to-day operations with automating and improving those 1% processes that going into running transportation, whether it be driver compliance, managing issues in the live environment with buses running late. We're trying to help all of those things, right? But it's a real challenge when everyone's operating different systems, and so on. So how we integrate with our fleet operator partners to make their lives easier too, right, is something that we continue to work on, and work with our operator partners to build out.
Yeah, that is very well said. I appreciate you mentioning that, Sam, because honestly, I started in this industry when I was 17 years old. I am now 35. And again, I lost all my hair in this industry. But one of the things
Did
that
it
that is
happen between 30 and 35? Should I be worried?
no, you're good. You're good. You're already past the hardest years. So one of the things that I have most of the struggle with is, as an industry, we still operate sort of with the dinosaur mentality, and there's so many things that we could do all collectively to provide better service to the client, but overall just operate, more efficient and productive. And you mentioned it, we still have moms and pops that are running a business in paper. And the other thing too is that with inflation hitting so many companies, a lot of operators haven't been able to sort of inject more capital into their infrastructure to have more robust technology and infrastructure to service Fortune 1000 companies, all create partnerships with strategic partnerships like Zillow, right? I think one of the key items that, as I have this conversation with you and for all the fleet operators, is the vehicle utilization, right? If you have gaps within your fleet, and for folks like us that are managing anywhere from 100 to 200 buses, I'm always looking to increase utilization. So, with that being said, Sam, how are you guys sort of identifying, if, let's just say in New York, uh, identifying utilization, whether it's for a company or for a fleet operator, where you could create a strategic alliances?
Yeah, so we've got some great examples of this in the UK, where we've been building partnerships with fleet operators, and over time, some of the stats we're most proud of, we've been able to increase operators' revenue by 20% without them increasing the size of their fleet, right? And that's where the magic happens, right? Is actually, can we work with that fleet operator to um, really optimize the use of that fleet, keep the vehicles moving as much as possible, right? And we're actively building out our technology in that space, either by building it ourselves or partnering with dispatch and availability systems that actually allow us to see that availability in real time, and that's very much in its early stages. But I think, going back to your earlier point, like, I actually think it's a really exciting moment and a massive opportunity for the more forward-thinking operators, because we're at this moment where some people are embracing it, some people aren't, but there's all the technology out there to solve these problems, these optimization problems, these digitalization problems, and there's tons of money going into shared transportation because it's sustainable, right? And everyone wants to go on this alternative fuels transition, right? So for me, it's like this kind of amazing moment that we saw in the taxi industry back in 2011, where folks like Uber were really scaling up, and some operators embraced it, and they now are still in a great position. And some didn't, and they didn't work out for them, right? And for me, this is this similar moment for the coach industry. We really want to work with the industry to help them to really thrive over the next few years.
Got it. And Sam, in the essence of transparency and in the essence of the obvious, again, you guys swear to the American Bus Association. So and there's a lot of fleet operators that are listening to the show.
Yeah.
On their mindset or their perspective, they might say, well, they are a direct competitor, right? And they might be very reluctant to work with Zillow. So in a nutshell, can you explain how, whether it's a conflict of interest working with Zillow or not, and what is your perspective?
Yeah, so that's not a foreign comment to me, right? I've been I think one of the challenges is the industry's had like a history of brokers and technology companies coming into the sector and driving prices down, and that causes a reluctance to anything new that looks like a broker, even though I would always very much distance ourselves from being a broker as much as possible, right? Because that just drives quality down too, right? We want to make sure there's a fair price for everybody involved. So I think we spend a huge amount of time speaking to operators, building trust, right? And trying to show to them, actually, number one, how we can make their lives easier, and two, how we can grow the business, right? And the first thing for us is actually, managing Fortune 1000 companies isn't easy. And I'm sure so many operators out there know that, right? And actually, through the use of our technology and service that we're doing across hundreds and hundreds of customers, we're able to do that really, really efficiently at scale in a way that actually reduces the account management overhead, if you like, for the operator, so they can just focus on high quality, safe operations, right? Which is generally what they want to focus on. And then the second is actually, how can we go and build the business together, right? Because I very much see it as, Zelo doesn't have experience in operating 100 vehicles, all the challenges that operators go through every day, whether it be driver shortages, vehicles breaking down, insurance, maintenance. I don't understand that, right? But you folks do, right? And actually, if we can combine the brilliance of what you do and the track record of doing that at scale with a modern technology solution and service that really improves the quality and differentiates it from other players, that's something difficult for a customer to turn down, right? Because actually it delivers real value, right? And it improves the experience for them. It makes it easier for the end client to manage the program, and it reduces the cost down for them over time, right? So that's really what I'd say to them. And we spend a lot of time building trust. I know how that goes, right? We've got to pay you on time. We always do that. We got to make sure that we start small and build up with fleet operators over time. And really, what we want to be doing actually over time is start increasing the services that we provide to operators, right? Not just bring them business, right? We want to help with the EV transition. We want to help with other areas of technology. So that's really the approach we take.
Got it. Very well said. So let's gear towards sustainability in electrical vehicles. How are you guys sort of penetrating into that industry, and how are you guys sort of standing out from the norm, right?
Sure. So I've made a net zero commitment by 2030, right? So that basically means that, our company, 100% of our trips that happen on the Zelo platform need to be using electric vehicles by 2030, right? Which is ambitious. Right now we're 5%. By the end of this year, we'll be 15%. Now that's difficult for me to say as someone that doesn't own any buses, right? But what we know is that our clients really want it, right? Those Fortune 100, 1000 companies, they all have corporate ambitions. They all want to make it happen. They obviously don't understand how difficult it is, right? And then on the fleet operator side, there's tons of unknowns, right? This. No one knows what the second life of the battery looks like. No one knows what the maintenance looks like. No one knows what the range really looks like when it goes to 16 degrees, 30 degrees Fahrenheit in New York or whatever, right? All of these things are big problems and big unknowns, right? So what we're really trying to do is reduce as much of that complexity and the unknowns as possible. So on the client side, we're going to them and selling full electric programs. In return, they need to sign up not for 1 year, they need to sign up for 2 or 3 years, which gives the operator the certainty that they're going to absolutely keep those vehicles moving for those 2 to 3 years, right? Which is one of the challenges right off the bat. The second thing is actually, how do we make that transition as easy as possible? So we've partnered with vehicle manufacturers like Yutong and Pelican, and charging subscription and vehicle subscription companies like Zenobi, both in the UK and now also in the US, so that operators can essentially lease the whole package, right? So that's, you can rent the vehicle on a monthly basis, you can rent the temporary charging infrastructure on a monthly basis, you can do all of this in a way that isn't, tens of thousands of dollars of charging infrastructure investment and 10-year leases, right? And that's how we've transitioned already from 0% to 5%, where we are today, of our operator partners' fleets electric, and how we intend to help the industry continue the transition. And we're going to get even more creative over time with financing solutions and everything really to make it happen.
That is awesome. So Sam, tell me a little bit about the sort of the infrastructure and sort of the financial bone from Scylla. You guys, uh, are you guys owned by a private equity firm, venture capital, or what is the sort of the infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a venture capital backed company. We raised over $20 million. We're about to announce another funding round in the next few weeks, which will make me sleep at night a bit better, right? These funding rounds are always hard work, right? But I think we're actually now. I describe we've really kind of graduated from being a scrappy startup to being a scale up, because we've got really strong foundations in really two great markets, right? The UK and the US. We've got really big companies, whether they be some of the largest third party logistics companies as clients. We've got one of the largest e-commerce brands in the world as a client. We're really kind of solid foundations now, and really what we're doing is raising capital to turn what is a profitable business at its heart into something much bigger, right? So we're trying to grow the business 2 to 3x every year, which is hard work, but it's possible.
Totally. So with that being said, Sam, how do you guys define success? Is it market share? Is it number of riders? Is it profit yet? Or because I know it takes years, right? Especially with sort of the ambitions that you guys have. What is your play?
Yeah, so we have 3 words we use internally to define the strategy, which is grow profit positively, right? It might sound cheesy, but it's essentially like we're trying to grow the business really quickly, but we also need to make sure it's profitable, right? And of course, not everything's profitable from the off, but our UK business is profitable. The US right now is more about market share, but within the next 1 to 2 years, we want to reach profitability. And the third is make sure we do it positively and have impact, right? And for that means making sure we're working with operators to build their businesses. It means putting more electric buses on the road. It means helping to connect more people to jobs. And that's really why we think about those 3 different pillars.
Got it. What are you most excited about for 2023?
Well, 2 things. Our US expansion, right? We've been spending a ton of time laying the foundations, understanding how the market's different, building the team out here in Boston. So we've got 10 folks now here in Boston. And now actually is the time to really, really kind of scale up this year, and very excited with some of the pipeline and new clients that we have coming on board, and new operators that we have coming on board. We signed up over 30 new operator partners at the show in Orlando last week, which is super exciting. And then the second thing is the rollout of electric vehicles, right? I think we're super excited about that, and everybody's talking about it, but not many people are doing it, right? And I think actually we're in a really good place to do it now.
Awesome. And my last 2 questions, Sam, is what is the best advice you ever gotten so far that sticks to you the most normally?
Probably stay curious, because like you've always got to keep learning. You've always got to keep challenging whether that established way of doing things is still the right to be doing things, because the minute that you're no longer kind of naive and curious, then you stop innovating.
That is very, very well said. And it applies for me in every aspect of life, whether it's in business, in my health, in the gym, in spirituality, right? I'm always looking to not only find out the information, but there's some sort of curiosity inside that just keeps me going.
Yeah.
And it's not like working hard. I'm just curious. I want to find out what it is. I want to find out how it is to own a private jet, and all these different toys and all these different experiences, because it's just my curiosity that actually drives me. So yeah, very well said. And then my last question, Sam, is what is your favorite book? What that you normally recommend the most?
Yeah. I'd actually I have three, but I think one of them's Shoe Dog, but everyone's read that. And then the other two are the Ben Horowitz books. One is, I always get this wrong, is What You Do Is Who You Are. The other one's The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And the first book around What You Do Is Who You Are, I think that's what it is a book about culture, and it's what we built our whole company culture on. And it's a bit about...
What is it called again?
I'm going to get this wrong now. I think it's What You Do Is Who You Are, or something very similar to that, by Ben Horowitz. And it's a book on culture, and it's basically all about the fact that like culture shouldn't be a set of values that you sit on the wall. It should be like how you want your people to behave. And we've been really successful in applying that logic into the culture at Zelo, and it's something I actually read quite often because I kind of really enjoy it.
Awesome. And then the second book that you mentioned is The Hard Things About the Hard Things.
The hard thing about hard things, yeah, exactly. Which is another Ben Horowitz book, and it's just super pragmatic approaches to how you deal with stuff as you build a business. Learning how to deal with the unpredictable and the ups and the downs,
especially for startups, right? I read that book. It was unbelievable. Awesome. Yep. So Sam, again, thank you very much for joining our podcast today. For all the listeners, thank you for tuning in. Again, this is Sam Ryan with Zelo. Sam, how can, for all the listeners that would like to know more about Zelo and do business with you, how can they contact you or some of your peers?
Absolutely. Just drop me an email on sam@zelo.co, just .co. That's ZEELO.co, or just hit me up on LinkedIn. We'd love to chat.
Perfect. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. Please make sure you like and subscribe. You guys have a good night. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Ground Transportation. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the show.